Okie dokie. Let's bring this up.
Last night?
No, you know what? I totally forgot about it, but someone told me they were there. It was very nice. Is anyone there last night? Totally forgot about it. I was giving my Smichas Chaver program. So, okay. So let me share the screen. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so we saw this yesterday. Hamotze zoche ba'aveda elim kein lo nisyashu haba'olam me'aveda achar shehigia liyad hamotze. Whenever you find an object and you can ascertain with fair certainty that the person had yeush, then you get to keep it. Um, and that's true, af b'sheyesh siman b'chayfetz, even if there's a siman. Kegon shahaya chayfetz munach b'makom zman rav. Let's say you know there's an object that's been lying there for a long time. V'yesh litlos shekvar hisyashu habalim, and therefore you can assume that the owner already had yeush. Ela shemikol makom tovi yashar la'asod lifnim mishurat hadun la'achzer ta'aveda. But with that said, a person should strive to go above and beyond the letter of the law. And if you know that you could probably identify the owner with a little bit of effort, so then you should try to return it nonetheless. Kol sheet barir lamotze shaploni hu ba'alav shel chayfetz. Here he's talking about a case where you think you know who it belongs to. Ve'eino tzarich lahachriz al kach, and you wouldn't need to even post anything. Ve'ein bazem mishum lifnim mishuras hadin be'etzem hachraza mitzad hamotze. And there's no effort that you'd have to put in by making a public announcement. V'dat harama kishaba'olim shel hachayfetz hainu hame'abed hu asher b'hamotze ani pater ha'ani milasos lifnim mishuras hadin. According to the Ramah, if the owner that you believe this belongs to is a wealthy man and the finder is a poor man, and the halacha entitles the ani to the object that he found, then he doesn't have to go lifnim mishuras hadin. He doesn't have to go above and beyond the letter of the law. So there's a lot of of requirements that you'd have to meet in order to be allowed to keep the item. But we're talking about a situation where it's clear from the circumstances the item has collected a lot of dust, and so therefore it's reasonable to assume that the owner has had yeush. In a situation where the finder is poor, and it seems to him from the circumstances that the owner is a person of means, then you can just go ahead and keep it. But otherwise, a person should strive to go lifnim mishuras hadin, above and beyond the letter of the law, as long as it doesn't take any effort to try and track down the owner. Next, returning lost items to non-Jews. She'ela mishamatza avedu shel goy v'katuv alav ketovet o telephone ha'im tzarich lahashiv et aveda o shechiv avedu nemar rak ba'avedas Yisrael. Is the obligation of hashavas aveda when a guy's address and name is in the wallet that you found? Is that just for a Jew, or do you have to return it to a non-Jew as well? Misha matza aveda ubarlo shaveda zu shayechet lagoy. Okay, so again, I'm not happy with the way he's writing. It's a Haredi, a hardliner. If you know for sure that it belongs to a goy, asalo lalechet o lihitkasher lagoy kedei lahashiv et aveito. So the first thing he writes is that you're not allowed to. And again, he's writing with an absolute disconnect from what so many Rishonim write, that if a non-Jew is an ethical, upright citizen, then they don't qualify as an evil person. But he's looking at all goyim as Rishonim, which is very, very bad. Very disappointing that people still believe that today. V'im hechazira lekadesh et Hashem kedei sheyifaru et Yisrael v'yedu shehem balei amuna hareza mishubach. But if your intention in returning it is to make a kiddush Hashem, that people should see that the Jewish people are ethical people and they are faithful people, then it is praiseworthy to return it. Uv'makom sheyesh chilul Hashem, כגון שמצא במקום שרובם ישראל והגוי יחשוב שהישראל גנבו, חייב להחזיר. And if it's a situation where if you don't return it, it could create a chilul Hashem, such as you find the lost object in a community or a neighborhood which is predominantly Jewish, right? In other words, let's say you find a wallet in Thornhill, so then there would be a chilul Hashem not to return it because he's going to think, oh, these Jews, they're greedy and yeah. ובכל מקום מכניסים את כלי הגוי לשומרם מפני הגנבים ככלי ישראל מפני דרכי שלום. And therefore, his conclusion is that the original answer is totally incorrect, and there's a concept called darchei shalom, that you try to preserve the peace whenever possible, and and make sure that you live in harmony with the non-Jews in our community, and therefore you always, if something has a siman on it, no matter who it belongs to, you should always take it home with you and protect it in the same way that you do for the lost item of a Jew.
So why would he come out and say usher in the beginning and then say it's mutter?
Because he was just quoting from the Gemara, which was talking about idolaters, and he makes no distinction between idolaters and modern day non-Jews.
Interesting at the top line there, he didn't say it's usher lahashikla. He said it's usher laletachla, the kasher, right? So he didn't say it's usher to return it. He says you can't go to him and become close to him.
But then he said, "V'hamachazira hareza over avera." If you return it, yeah. So
if it's an item, does that make a difference?
It might if it's a little Buddha, it might make a difference. There I might be able to hear that, But again, is it really even idolatry? The little Buddhas. I'm not even convinced that that's idolatry because I don't know that they worship the little Buddhas. I think they give a little food to the little Buddhas in the corner of the house.
Given the size of the little Buddhas, they probably give a lot of food to the little Buddhas.
They light a candle. Okay, I don't know. I think that idolatry is largely non-existent in the world today. Okay. She'ela mahadin kishematza sifrei kodesh o tashmishe kedusha ba'oto makom sherubam goyim hayim gam sham harei elu shelo tzarech lahachriz aleihem. We said that if you find something in a place which is predominantly non-Jewish, you're allowed to assume that it fell from a non-Jew. You can keep it, but what if the item is something Jewish? So what if it's a pair of tefillin? What if it's a sefer? So the answer is Misha Matzah b'makom sherubam goyim dainu sha'ovrim b'shavim rubam goyim ba'oto makom kigon sifrei kodesh mezuzos tefillin b'chayotze bazeh. So in a situation where you find Judaica in a place which is predominantly non-Jewish, yeshel of chiyuv lahachriz af kishamatzam b'makom sherubam goyim. You have an obligation to return it. V'hatam keven shaba'olam einam nisyashim. And the answer is because the owner may not have had yeush. And so therefore, that seems fairly obvious. Next, listening to a parent who tells you not to return a lost item. She'ela, mishara es avedas chaver v'rotz lahachziro lo. A person finds his friend's lost item. Va'aviv mitnaged she'ela chaben lahachzir et aveda me'ezo siba misuyemet. And the father tells his son, I don't want you to return that item. Does the son have to listen to his father or not? Normally, the mitzvah of kibbut av va'em would not trump any mitzvah in the Torah. So I don't know why this is such a question. So let's see the tshuva. So if your father tells you don't return a lost item, just like if he tells you don't do any mitzvah, you don't listen to your father. And even if the father tells you, I need your help now, I need you to help me with something there, and I know that I have a chiyuv to be mishamesh, to serve my father, gam kein lo yishmal, you still don't listen to him, elim kein kvar hitchil b'shimush aviv pater milatzer, unless you're in the middle of serving your father, in which case you're pater from the mitzvah of hashavas aveda, because you're already involved. Osek b'mitzvah pater min a mitzvah. If you're already involved in a mitzvah, you don't have to do another mitzvah. Ela shemitzvah al ha'av limchal al kavodo kedei sheyuchal haben l'kayim mitzvahs haShabbos aveda. However, the father should be moichel on his kavod. The father should try his best to say to his son, "You have a great mitzvah you can do. It's okay. I'll forgo my honor. Don't worry. You can leave me now and take care of something else." Okay, next. She'ela. Misha matza aveda b'Shabbos o b'Yom Tov. Person finds a lost object on Shabbos or Yom Tov. Hayimuter lahachriz al ota aveda beveis hakneses o beveis hamedrash o b'chol makom shahatzibur misasev sham. So, can you make a public announcement in shul on Shabbos and Yom Tov? So the answer is
Why would you think you can?
maybe it's a weekday activity, maybe it involves some transaction. It's a commercial kind of activity. So the answer is mutter lahachriz b'Shabbos o b'Yom Tov al aveda b'makom shara b'mitzuim sham kemo beit hakneset ubatei medrash v'chol kayotze bazeh. Totally mutter to make a public announcement on Shabbos and Yom Tov. Afilu im ha'aveda hu davar she'asur l'taltalo. And that's true even if the item is muktzah.
Right.
Okay, ve'imatza aveda b'Shabbos ve'imuktzah asur litla biyado. And we know that if you find a lost item on Shabbos that's muktzah, you're not allowed to pick it up. V'im ha'aveda ina muktzah, uva'oto makom yesh erev kedin v'yesh bo simin, yitol, let's say you find a set of car keys. Car keys are muktzah. So you can't touch them, but maybe you could kick them into a corner so to let a person know that I found your car keys. And
Because of the keys itself.
the keys themselves are muktzah because it's a klisha melachto le'isr. It's a utensil that is used for prohibited use on Shabbos. But, so...
What if you have your house key on the same ring? Is the whole
Um,
thing?
so then that's an interesting question. Is it, it's a basis le'isr leheter. You might be allowed to pick up the key ring indirectly. But that's not so simple that you're permitted to do that. So because it's not clear which is the primary key and which is the secondary key. So anyway,
Your house is worth more than your car, but still,
yeah,
I don't know that that's not.
yeah, depends how many
These
keys you
days,
have.
people-
These days you only have one set of car keys, and also, but
Yeah,
you
it's
can
like-
you can make multiple copies of a house key. So anyway, so if you live in a place where there's an eruv, so there's no problem of picking it up and carrying it, and there's a siman and it's not muktzah, yitol v'yachriz aleh b'makom sha'atzibur matzui shama l'shcheinav u'lachaveirav. Then you should make a public announcement, let your friends know. So therefore, even if the item is muktzah, you're still allowed to make a public announcement. And certainly but you can't pick it up. But if the item is not muktzah, then you should pick it up and put it in a safe place. But in either case, you can make an announcement. Now, v'nir shebecholo shel moed imatza aveda yachol lichtov moda'a v'litlosa beveis hakneses v'chulei. We learned this before, that if you find something on Chol HaMoed, even though normally you're not allowed to write on Chol HaMoed, but for this purpose, for the purpose of a mitzvah, you are permitted to write a note, post it, and, make a sign and post it. He says, and so v'hatam d'shema oto adam she'ibir avedaso mikomi, and the answer is because it is pressing to do this on Chol HaMoed, because what if the person's from out of town? And if you wait until after Chol HaMoed is over, after Yom Tov is over, he may have gone back to his own city. And he may leave after Yom Tov. So it really is pressing to put it up as soon as possible. ולכן כסיבס מודעה של עבד נחשבת כשאר הדברים שהתירו חז"ל לכתוב במועד כלשהו נחשב כדבר עבד מותר לכתוב. And therefore our sages say that anything that could cause a loss of money if you don't take care of it on Chol HaMoed, you're allowed to do on Chol HaMoed. So here too, there's the potential to the guy's losing money. I'm not sure why he needs to rely on that on that heter. I would think that it's permitted even if it's not going to cause a loss of money. Okay, next. She'ela. Yesh pa'amim sha'aveda sheyesh basimen harehi shel hamotzei kagon. There are times when the finder is allowed to keep the item even though it has a siman, as we learned before, when you know for sure that the person has had yeush. And here's another illustration where it's completely lost to all humankind.
Isn't that the ocean case?
That's the ocean case. Kagon shehitzel min ha'ari o min hadov o mezuto shel yam. So he says when you retrieve the item from a lion's mouth or from the bottom of the ocean, so he says pirish makomos bisvas hayam shederach hayam lachzor la'achurav b'chol yom v'shotef mashenimsa sham v'holech o mishluliso shel nahar she'ino posek. In other words, the ocean washes this ashore, or the river washes it downriver.
Yes.
Or when the river swells, it pushes this item onto the river banks. So we've mentioned this already, that you're allowed to keep the item, even when it has a siman. But the question that he's asking now is, Ha'im yesh mitzvah lifnim mishuras hadin lahashiva lebalim kagon shiachris b'vate knesios al yedei modos. Is there any concept of going above the letter of the law to try and make sure that you can get this back to its owner by posting signs and so forth? So the answer, he says, is yesh omrim shahamotze aveda b'makomos halalu af sheyesh basimen v'hi shel hamotze keven sheis yashu habolim hudaim la'adam shetzavach al beisu shenafal val sfinasu shetava shalonitin lahatzilam. He says, some people say that if a person finds a lost item that he knows he's allowed to keep, since the owner already had yeush, so it's no different from a person who is lamenting that his house collapsed or that his boat sank. In both of those cases, a person feels really bad, but it's not your house anymore. It's not your boat anymore. They're gone. What? The flood, yeah, whatever. But nonetheless, there's a mitzvah to go above and beyond the letter of the law, to return it to its owner, even though you're perfectly allowed to keep it. Because at the end of the day, the Torah says, do that which is upright and good in God's eyes, so that it will be good for you. V'yesh omrim, but there's another opinion, shein baza mitzvah shalifnim mishuras hadin, that there is no obligation to go above and beyond the letter of the law. And just seeing who he's quoting here. Okay, so he brings a legitimate machlokus in this area, but we would always recommend to go above and beyond the letter of the law. Next, and here we saw this as well already. The shayla as far as whether you can use an item when let's say your raincoat was swapped in the coat room, can you use the other guy's raincoat? So remember what we said, under normal conditions, you're not allowed to, unless there's a kavod habrios issue. Your suit will get ruined, or your shoes will get, your feet, well, barefoot, the boots, right? Sheila mishin chalfu kelov im acher kagon mitriya o min alayim ha'imutalo lishtamish ba'oto chayfetz b'intayim shelo shayach lo. So they took your boots or your coat or your umbrella instead of his own. Can I use that in the interim? Shuva mishit chalfu kelov kagon shaya b'mikva o b'beis hakneses v'lokach kovo mitriya min alayim v'chol kayotze bazeh she'enim shayachim lo. So let's say you end up taking home an umbrella or a hat or shoes that don't belong to you. So if the person who took the item did it purposely. In other words, let's say a guy saw a new umbrella. He says, the heck with my umbrella, I'm going to take this new umbrella. So if you know he did it purposely because someone overheard him, so mutter lazeh shenilchalfu kelev lishtamis b'chayfetz hayasham, then the guy is a gazlan. He's a gazlan, plain and simple, so you can use whatever item belongs to him as at least partial compensation for what he stole from you. Avalim lo borer sharishon hechlif bakavana, ela machmat shelo hirgish. But if the guy made an honest mistake, or at least there's a possibility that he made an honest mistake, let's say, for example, he took your old one and he left his newer one. Like he left his item that's of even better quality. Then you're not allowed to use those items, but rather you should keep it with you until the owner comes and then you can give it to him. And this we learned in Hilchos Gezela, but we said that if there's an actual Kavod Habrios issue, then there is an exception to the rule. And I don't know why he doesn't bring this. Right, he actually brings it in the footnotes. If it's going to cause you tsar, a lot of tsar to not have to walk home barefoot or without.
If you have the mikvah by accident, you took the same pants and underwear, now you'll have no clothes to go home. Not gonna walk outside, not that, you know.
Well, yeah.
They have the same pants, the same underwear, you know, it's like, no, they have the same black suit and the same one.
You know, I'll tell you.
That's the socket.
I'll tell you something funny. When I was in New York, I opened up my little carry-on and I realized I hadn't packed any underwear. I had 2 pairs of underwear, and we were there for 5 days. So I was speaking, so Karen said, okay, I'll do the laundry every day, whatever. Because my brother-in-law is much smaller than I am. I would never fit into his gatkes. Anyway, so I was speaking to my son, and he says, what about Uber Eats? I said, what are you talking about? I thought Uber Eats was for food. He says, no, you can get anything delivered to you with Uber Eats. So it's 5 p.m. Arab Shabbos. He says, they'll bring it to you within 30 minutes. So I go on the app, and it's in a place in the 5 towns. There's a Target like 2 miles away. And you go and you do a search, underwear. And then they show you what stores are in your area, like Family Dollar, Target, what stores and what size, and you click on it, and an Uber guy came up to the door, and it was only like an extra like $7 or $8 for this service. And he brought me a pack of underwear before Shabbos.
That's the thing that sure is.
Never have to leave your place again.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable what the world we live in today. Like so many conveniences. Like, you don't have to worry about anything. Okay.
I was gonna ask you, if the guy deliberately takes the yashan, takes the old umbrella, right? No, yeah, takes the old umbrella, leaves his new one. So he's a gun, right? But what damage?
Yeah, but why would he do that?
I know, so I'm saying, but why would he do it? But if he did do that, what would the damages be if he's a gun? Right?
What do you mean? What would he stole? Yeah. You have no right to steal, even if you feel that you're doing something.
They have to, what are the damages that the guy sustained? He has a new umbrella, and now this guy has the old one.
Well, he still has sinned against God. Yeah, he would be chayav, unless you say, right? We learned this halacha before in Hilchos Gezela, that even if your intention is noble, like you want to steal from a guy so that
You want to give him the newer one.
you want to steal a guy so that you can give him kafel, right? Or you can give him double, or you want to steal from him so that you can get him a new umbrella because his old umbrella, or like he's wearing a hat, right? And you say, this hat is chaloshes, and I want to get you a new hat. And the guy says, no, I don't need it. I don't need any favors from you. So you steal his hat, right? And so that he can't wear it anymore. And then you say, I notice you're not wearing a hat. He says, yeah, I don't know what happened to it. I happen to have a new hat. I want to give it to you. That's also an Isser Deoraisa. Even if what you're doing is noble, you can't steal from someone. Okay, so maybe there's no financial loss, there's no financial restitution, but you still have to do tshuva for violating the Torah. Okay. Now, another controversial thing. Remember, he was very hard on people who were Mechalel Shabbos and felt that they don't have the din of Jews anymore. When we saw very clearly that from the Chazon Ish that that's not true anymore. So here's the Sheila. Amru Chachamenu Zal Mechalel Shabbos Befer Hesia Ein Machzirin Lo Es Avedasa. So we know our sages tell us that if a person is publicly a Sabbath violator, you don't return his lost item. Ha'im davka keshechilol Shabbos pa'amayim v'yoser, or afilu chilol Shabbos echas ein machzirin lo. So how much of a machal Shabbos does he have to be? What if he only violated one Shabbos? Like he's part of the community and he's saying, I'm thinking about checking out. And he tells you in confidence, Nid Shabbos Garet, but I drove here today. Or something like that, right? Let's say the guy tells you, I wanted to know what it felt like. So I decided to be Machal Shabbos. I switched the lights on and off in my house. Or he does, but he has to do it befarhesia. He has to do it publicly. So I was riding my Harley today, right? And I did it really loud down Bathurst. And it felt exhilarating because I didn't care anymore. So then he comes to shul for mincha, right? And he tells you. So the question now is he now called the Machal Shabbos B'Faresia, where I don't have to return his lost items anymore? Or does he have to be a habitual Shabbos violator, that he has to do it for more than one Shabbos? This is a very interesting question. I'm not sure how practical of an application it has, but let's see what he has to say. So tshuva, yesh mi she'omer mechal Shabbos b'farhesia ein machzirin lo aveda dafka b'chilol pa'amayim or shalosh. That some say that a person only has a status of a mechal Shabbos b'farhesia if he has violated Shabbos more than 2 or 3 times. Aval im chilol Shabbos echas machzirin lo. But if he only violated one Shabbos, then you have to return his lost item. Because maybe he just had a temporary lapse in judgment, right? He just needed to get this out of his system. V'yesh misha omer, another opinion is, afim chilo Shabbos b'farhesia pam echas, ein machzirin lo es avedaso. Some say all it takes is just one infraction, right? You're a machal Shabbos b'farhesia. I don't have to return your lost item. V'chein halacha, and that's the halacha. And therefore you can keep his lost item. Now, where does he get this from? So maybe this is worth looking into for just a moment, just because it's such an interesting question. What defines someone as a machal Shabbos b'farhesia? Now, remember, this is a guy who you went to yeshiva with. There are people like that today. Guys who went to. Unfortunately, there's a guy that the son of a guy that I was in Kollel with, who himself was a Kollel Jungerman for many years, like much more yeshivish than I am, who very, very intelligent young man, and just made a conscious decision after going through a lot of different philosophical thoughts and ponderings that this was not for him. And so he and his wife left the Jewish community and still have a relationship with their family, but he's no longer from. That person may have a din of a machal Shabbos b'farhesia, in the sense that he's not a tinok shenishba. That like you could find those situations. So he says, Ayin laharambam behilchos gezela va'aveda perak yud aleph halacha beis shepasak aminin mi Yisrael va'apikorasim va'ovdei avodah zarah machal Shabbos b'farhesia asur lahachzir lehen aveda kagoy. So the Rambam paskins this way, and then in fairness to the author, he's really just going like the Rambam's hardline position on non-Jews and Sabbath desecrators. He says you don't return their lost items. Uva halacha gimel pasak avedas hagoy muteres. And the Rambam further writes that you're permitted to keep the lost items of a non-Jew. And like the Gemara says, v'kasav hakesef mishnah sham, al masha kasav harambam mechalale Shabbos befarhesia shadinam kegoyim hachi isa b'gemara chulin daf hey. Kesef Mishnah, who's the Rav Yosef Cairo, and his commentary to the Rambam writes that this is from a Gemara in Chulin, that you are no different from a Gentile if you become a Machal Shabbos B'Farhesia. U'fesefer Rav Pilam Chelek Beis B'Tshuva Sham B'Simin Yudches, Hevi Sham B'Inyan Machal Shabbos B'Farhesia, Shekasvu Ha'achronim, U'v'Yoredei B'Simin Beis Hanudavka Ba'asara Mi-Yisrael. When you say that he's Machal Shabbos in public, it has to be in front of 10 people, 10 Jews. Okay. Well, seems that way. We'll have to continue this Amir Tzashem tomorrow. Okay. Well, oh, sorry, not tomorrow. I am out of town tomorrow, Friday, and Monday. I'm here for Shabbos, but I'm flying in quickly into New York for a wedding, and then Monday, I'm also going back to New York. Okay, so have a wonderful Shabbos. This will be our last class. Would someone please post that on the Choshen Mishpat WhatsApp? Or maybe I'll just post it quickly. And we'll see you Mitzvah Shem on Tuesday next week. Thank you. Wayne, did you get that? Shmuel, you got that?
Okay, are you posting?